Hey everyone, so this video is going to cover runes, masteries, and items for Season 6 supports. If you haven't seen the first video, there'll be a link on your screen, just click that and go check it out. It'll cover like a champion tier list that this video is going to cover the runes and masteries for. So next up I'll talk about runes. Now these haven't changed too much in their standard form from Season 5 in the previous seasons. Supports have always sort of taken flat runes, and they don't really want scaling because you kind of rune for lane phase in a general term. In terms of adaptation, they have changed a bit in the current meta, but I'll talk about that after I go through some of the more basic pages. So first up we have just a standard armor page. Now, if you don't play support too often and you're not very comfortable and you want sort of like a one-size-fits-all page, this will be what you're using. Armor reds, health yellows, magic resist blues, and then armor quints again. Provides a lot of resists, is a very defensive page, and you would run this on your standard tanks such as Braum, Trundle, those sort of champions. For your offensive runes, for like mages, like let's say Morgana, you would run to swap out the armor and sub in some magic pen. Morgana does quite a bit of damage with her Q, pull, and ultimate. So swap out the armor for magic pen and then run a mixture of health and armor yellows, magic resist blues, and then some ability power quints to just pack on a little bit more damage. For a champion such as Thresh, obviously he does quite a bit of damage and a very offensive champion, has a lot of pick potential. His lane phase is very strong, so to supplement this we would put some AD in there. So we run AD reds, health yellows, magic resist blues, and armor quints. This just synergizes with the passive on his Flay, which grants bonus damage on hit, obviously. So Thresh will do a lot of auto attack damage, and obviously he's a ranged champion, so you'll get a lot more auto attacks off than a melee tank such as Braum would. We have also a hybrid pen page for a champion such as Bard, who does a lot of mixed damage. Bard auto attacks a lot, but also does a lot of damage through his Q. So taking hybrid pen reds, health yellows, magic resist blues, and then armor quints gives him basically everything he needs. Some players like to take attack speed on Bard, but I feel like hybrid pen is strictly better. Bard trades very bursty. You kind of get an auto attack down, stun them to a creep, and then your AD carry bursts, and that's it. Attack speed doesn't really work very well with short trades. If you're taking attack speed, you want to get more auto attacks in over a longer period of time than your enemy, so you come out on top. So I think hybrid pen overall is just a bit better. Next up we have a move speed page. I'd run this on the likes of Alistar if I'm laning against quite a passive lane where I don't need the extra armor, or maybe like a Blitzcrank if I want to run around solo queue and get a lot of picks. So just take some armor reds, health yellows, magic resist blues, and then obviously move speed quints to give you a bit more engage power and pick potential, ability to just roam around the map and set some plays up. And lastly, I have a specific Janna page, just because Janna's a little bit weird in that she's very window based, obviously, as I said earlier, with her shield, and you can force a lot of trades when you want to trade. So I like to take AD reds on her actually, and then a mixture of armor and health yellows, magic resist blues, and then some AP quints so that your shield is just a bit bigger. Janna is very good at getting auto attacks off in lane, obviously, because she's a ranged champion, and you can force trades with your shield, as I said, so she utilizes this page pretty well. Now these would be your very standard pages, obviously. There's only 6 of them. As I said earlier, the armor one is what you would use if you only want like 1 or 2 rune pages. I'd suggest keeping the armor in the AP page, just so you can run it on like AD and AP champions and you have the mixture of the two. In terms of adaptability, in the current meta, supports are often getting 30% CDR from items in game. So if you're not laning against a champion or a lane that does a lot of magic damage, for example, if the enemy has a Trundle and a Lucian sort of thing, they don't do any sort of magic damage really. You can swap out the magic resist blues in any of these pages for cooldown reduction blues, and then swap out 1 quint for a cooldown reduction quint, and that gives you a 10% CDR flat at level 1, and then as you progress through the game you'll eventually cap yourself out at 40 or 45% CDR, depending on whether you took the mastery in the middle tree for the extra 5%. And this is very strong in the current meta just because capping CDR is very important, and CDR is just the strongest stat on supports in general. But you do need to be careful doing this into a lane such as like a Bard or Morgana, because they do a lot of AP damage, and also watch out for AD carries like Corki, because he does 50% magic damage, and Ezreal as well. Next up, I'm going to talk about Masteries. Obviously, these got reworked quite recently, so a lot of people are still confused as to what they should be taking, but the current metagame has sort of shifted into 3 sort of paths you can take when setting up Masteries for the champion you're playing. As a general sort of guide, when trying to figure out Masteries for different support champions, the ferocity tree is largely ignored because it's very offensive and it just doesn't provide things we need. So as a general sort of rule, you want both 12 points in the cunning and resolve tree, and then the extra 6 points you sort of choose which keystone you're going to get, and then place the points accordingly. So first up, I'm just going to start with a standard tank page, 0, 12, 18. Obviously, Bond of Stone is very useful, provides a lot of damage reduction. And on tanks, that's basically all you ever need. So I would take this on the likes of Trundle or Braum, or very tanky champions, maybe a Leona as well. Some players are beginning to take Strength of the Ages, but I feel like Bond of Stone, with a recent buff, is probably just a better choice overall. Next up, we have like an offensive page, where we take Thunderlords, so we go 8, 0, 18, 12, taking Intelligence for the extra cooldown reduction, and Thunderlords obviously. So a Morgana, a Bard, a Thresh would even run this page. Champions that can proc Thunderlords and that have quite a strong lane phase in general would run this sort of page. And then lastly, we have sort of a utility page, which is similar to the offensive one, but we go Windspeaker's Blessing instead of Thunderlords. I would run this page on champions with heals and shields, obviously, for the bonus heals and shields 10% stronger that Windspeaker's Blessing provides. So a Janna or a Soraka or maybe a Nami would run this page. Nami, you could probably debate running Thunderlords, but that's very specific. Things to note when thinking about Masteries, in the Cunning tree on Poppy, Poppy, very offensive champion, very strong lane phase, taking an offensive page, so going Thunderlords, I would take Precision over Intelligence in the Cunning tree. Just gives you a little bit more damage with the Magic Pen and Armor Pen. Also in the Resolve tree, champions with innate healing, so maybe Alistar or Trundle through his passive, you would want to take Runic Armor over Veteran Scars, just because overall it's going to provide you with more effective health than the flat health, given the 8% healing and regeneration bonus. And lastly, a very specific one on Alistar. Although he is a tank, he already has a lot of damage reduction from his ult, and in the middle of a team fight, you could be getting off 3 or 4 man heals with your Triumphant Roar. So it's very good to take Windspeaker's Blessing over Bond of Stone, specifically on Alistar. You get an extra 5% CDR, which is good for your combo, and also provides a lot of resist in a team fight with an AoE heal. So lastly, I'll be talking about the different key items that you should be building on different champions. Since the removal of Green Wards, as I said earlier, supports aren't buying boots first anymore really, they're going for the Sightstone. So Sightstone is your main priority, and then your boots, and then onto building your actual items. Swiftness boots have replaced Mobi boots as the general norm. They're just very efficient, you don't lose your move speed when you get into combat, and also the slow reduction is very useful in a meta with a lot of slows, like spooky ghosts from mid laners or supports, or Trundle Pillar, that sort of thing. So Boots of Swiftness and Sightstone are your first 2 items, and then you'll be, in general, upgrading your support item before you build anything else. So depending on what you're playing, this is most likely going to be Face of the Mountain or Frost Queen's Claim. Obviously, Face of the Mountain on Relic Shield supports, like Poppy or Trundle or Braum, or just tanks like that, and then Frost Queen's Claim on other champions, like more offensive champions, so Morgana, Bard, basically anything AP. And then you need to make a decision. Your first item after this will be based on the enemy team comp for the most part. If the enemy solo lane is, for example, let's say Lulu and Lysandra, you should look to build Locket of the Iron Solari. Because the AoE magic resist is very useful, the shield is very useful, so you need to be building that ASAP for your team. If the enemy has a lot of AP, build Locket, and if the enemy has double AD carry, which isn't too uncommon now that Kindred and Graves exist as junglers, Frozen Heart is also a good choice. If you feel like you need to build both Locket of the Iron Solari and Frozen Heart, I suggest building Locket first, just because Frozen Heart isn't very efficient early in the game before you have health, and so In general, at the end of a game, your build will probably look like Sightstone, Swiftness Boots, your upgraded support item, Locket, Frozen Heart, and then you will have one slot left over for Pink Wards. Upgrading your Sightstone to Ruby Sightstone as well is also very useful. Either in between your Locket and Frozen Heart, or whichever one you build first and the second one, or after you've completed all your items. It's quite hard as a support to actually finish your last item in a solo queue game, unless your team is very far ahead and you're getting a lot of gold from winning team fights, because it takes about like 1700, 1800 gold or something to complete that item, and amassing that amount of gold in one go on a support whilst backing and refreshing like Pink Wards and buying elixirs maybe. So buying a Ruby Sightstone is kind of like a filler step. Things to think about: if the enemy team relies on a lot of like single target CC, maybe they don't really have any engage other than a Thresh Hook, then think about getting a Mikhail's Crucible, obviously for the cleanse effect. Basically you're building a QSS for your carries. It's very useful to deny a lot of engages. Also, if the enemy team has a AP top laner, think about replacing your Locket with a Banner of Command. Maybe your jungler's already built an Aegis and he's going Locket as well, so you can afford to go Banner. If your team has wave clear and can withstand like the enemy team knocking on your mid lane turrets while the Banner like pushes in a side lane, or if you have a split pusher into like an AP top laner, Banner of Command really helps with a split push and provides a lot of pressure that way. Alright, so that concludes just about everything. Thanks for watching. This is just an overall guide to the support role at the moment. Obviously, it's very general and there's a lot of specifics you can get into. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the written guide at chiefcsc.com/guides, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for listening.